Emily had always dreamed of owning her own home, and now that dream had finally become a reality. Her new house was everything she had ever wanted: a peaceful retreat with a spacious backyard, perfect for unwinding after long days at work. The highlight of the property was her newly built pool. It was sleek and modern, surrounded by a wooden deck and framed by carefully chosen landscaping that provided both privacy and beauty. Emily had spent months working with contractors, dealing with homeowner association permits, and meticulously planning every detail to make it perfect. The first weekend after the pool's completion, Emily invited a few close friends over to celebrate. The warm summer air was filled with laughter and the sound of splashing water. Emily felt a deep sense of pride as her friends complimented the pool and the effort she had put into her new home. It was a moment of pure happiness that reminded her why she had worked so hard to achieve her dream. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emily noticed someone approaching her backyard gate. She excused herself from the group and walked toward the gate to see who it was. An older woman with perfectly styled hair and a floral dress was standing there, smiling broadly. She carried a large straw tote that looked like it belonged at a beach resort. "Hi there," the woman called out, waving cheerfully. Emily opened the gate slightly, unsure of what to expect. "Hello, can I help you?" The woman extended her hand. "I'm Karen. I live next door. I've been meaning to come introduce myself, but, life gets busy. I just wanted to say welcome to the neighborhood." Emily shook Karen's hand, appreciating the friendly gesture. "Thanks, Karen. It's nice to meet you." Karen's eyes wandered past Emily, settling on the pool with a look of admiration. "Wow, that's some pool you've got there. It's absolutely gorgeous. The kids must love it." Emily smiled politely. "Thanks. I just finished it, so I'm really excited to finally enjoy it." Karen stepped a little closer, her tone casual but with an undertone of expectation. "My grandkids are staying with me for the summer. They've been complaining about how there's nothing to do around here. I was thinking, they'd just love to come over and swim sometime." Emily was caught off guard by the boldness of the request. She had just met Karen, and the pool was something she had poured her time, energy, and savings into. The idea of sharing it with someone she barely knew felt uncomfortable. "I'm really sorry, Karen," Emily said carefully. "I built the pool as a private space for myself. I'm sure you understand it's something personal to me." Karen's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, I get it. But, good neighbors help each other out. And it's not like I'd let them come unsupervised. I'd be right here the whole time. You wouldn't even notice we were there." Emily felt a knot forming in her stomach. She hated confrontation. But she also wasn't going to let someone guilt her into sharing her private space. "I really appreciate you asking, but I think it's best to keep the pool private. I hope that's okay." Karen's cheerful facade cracked slightly, and her voice took on a cooler tone. Of course. I just thought I'd ask. My husband always said that good neighbors should be generous with each other, but I guess times have changed." Emily felt a wave of guilt but stood firm. "Thanks for understanding. It was nice meeting you, Karen." Karen gave a tight-lipped smile. "You too, Emily. Enjoy your evening." As Karen walked away, Emily let out a sigh of relief. The encounter had been uncomfortable, but she was glad she had set boundaries. She didn't think much of it as she rejoined her friends, brushing off the incident as a quirky neighbor being a bit too forward. Over the next few days, however, Emily began to notice strange things happening. Early one morning, as she sipped her coffee on the back deck, she saw Karen standing at the edge of her property, staring at the pool. Karen didn't wave or acknowledge Emily. She just stood there for a few moments before turning and walking away. Emily found it unsettling but convinced herself it was nothing to worry about. Then came the trash incident. One evening, Emily found her recycling bins overturned, with garbage scattered across her driveway. She couldn't prove Karen was responsible, but the timing felt too coincidental. Emily started to feel uneasy, as if she were being watched or targeted. The final straw came on a sunny Saturday morning. Emily was inside folding laundry when she heard splashing and laughter coming from the backyard. She froze, her heart sinking. She rushed to the window and saw Karen and her 2 grandchildren in her pool. Karen was lounging on a deck chair, her straw tote beside her, while the kids played in the water. Emily stormed outside, her voice firm but controlled. "Karen, what are you doing?" Karen looked up with feigned surprise. "Oh, Emily, I didn't think you'd mind. The kids were bored, and it's such a hot day. I figured it wouldn't hurt to let them cool off for a bit." Emily's patience snapped. "Karen, I told you before, this is private property. You can't just come in here without my permission. You need to leave." Karen's expression hardened and she stood up slowly. "You know, my late husband always said this property line wasn't correct. He told me this part of the yard used to belong to us. If anything, I'm the one being generous by not making a fuss about you taking what isn't yours." Emily stared at her in disbelief. "That's absurd. I have the deed and the survey. This is my property, and you are trespassing. Leave now, or I'll have to call the police." Karen gathered her things, her face a mask of indignation. "Fine. But this isn't over, Emily. You'll regret being so unneighborly. Mark my words." As Karen and her grandchildren left, Emily felt a wave of anxiety. What had started as an awkward encounter had now escalated into a serious conflict. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a nightmare that would test her patience, her resolve, and her right to enjoy the home she had worked so hard for. Emily woke up the next morning with a sense of unease that she couldn't quite shake. Karen's threat from the day before replayed in her mind like a broken record. "You'll regret being so unneighborly." The words, paired with Karen's smug expression, had lingered in Emily's thoughts all night. She hoped it was just an idle threat from an upset neighbor, but something told her it wouldn't be that simple. That afternoon, Emily received her first hint that Karen's words were more than just a passing comment. A certified letter arrived in her mailbox, stamped with urgency. She opened it to find an official notice of a lawsuit filed against her. Karen was claiming partial ownership of the backyard, including the pool area, and demanding legal recognition of her rights to use the space. The letter accused Emily of encroaching on her property and violating Karen's supposed easement rights. Emily stared at the letter, her heart racing. She read through the pages over and over, trying to process the bizarre claims. Karen's argument rested on the assertion that her late husband had told her the original property line extended into Emily's yard. Despite having no concrete evidence, Karen was adamant that she was entitled to the portion of land where the pool now sat. Frustrated but determined to resolve the issue quickly, Emily called her lawyer, Alice, who had helped her close on the property. Alice listened intently as Emily described the situation, and then asked Emily to bring in all the documents related to the house, including the deed, property survey, and permits for the pool. "You've got nothing to worry about if everything is in order," Alice reassured her. "But I'll admit, it's not every day someone files such an outrageous claim. Let's get all your paperwork together and put this nonsense to rest." Over the next few days, Emily compiled everything she could find: the deed to her property, a copy of the professional survey she had commissioned before purchasing the home, and the detailed homeowner association permits she had obtained before building the pool. Everything clearly indicated that her backyard, including the pool area, was entirely within her property lines. Meanwhile, Karen seemed to grow bolder. Emily often spotted her near the edge of her property, standing just outside the fence, watching her yard as if she were mentally staking her claim. Once, Emily caught Karen talking to another neighbor while gesturing animatedly toward the pool. The other neighbor looked uncomfortable, nodding along without engaging much. Karen's behavior began to feel like harassment. Emily noticed small, petty things happening around her property. Her garbage cans were mysteriously tipped over again, her mail was once delivered soaked as if someone had poured water over it, and on one occasion she found Karen's dog in her backyard, barking and digging up the flower beds. Emily decided to install a security camera on her property. It wasn't a decision she took lightly. She didn't want to escalate the situation, but she felt she needed to protect herself in case Karen's antics worsened. She mounted the camera discreetly, ensuring it covered the backyard and the side gate, where Karen had previously trespassed. 2 weeks after receiving the lawsuit notice, Emily's lawyer scheduled a mediation session to try to resolve the issue without going to court. The meeting was held at a neutral office downtown, with Emily and Karen seated at opposite ends of a long conference table. Karen had brought her own lawyer, a sharp-looking man who seemed more interested in billing hours than the merits of the case. The mediator, A middle-aged woman with a calm demeanor began by asking each party to explain their side of the story. Karen went first, her tone dripping with faux concern. "I'm not trying to be difficult," she said, glancing at Emily as though she were the unreasonable one. "But this property has been in my family for decades. My late husband always said the backyard extended beyond that fence. I don't want to take anything away from Emily, I just want what's fair." Emily clenched her fists under the table. Karen's act was infuriating. When it was her turn to speak, Emily presented her documents clearly and confidently. She explained how she had gone through all the proper channels to confirm her property lines and obtain permits for the pool. She even showed the mediator a copy of the survey, which left no room for doubt. Karen's lawyer attempted to poke holes in the survey by suggesting it might be outdated or inaccurate, but Emily's lawyer quickly countered with a certified verification from the county records office. The mediator nodded, clearly leaning toward Emily's side. Karen, however, wasn't ready to back down. She pulled out a tattered, hand-drawn map, claiming it was proof of her property's original boundaries. The map was laughably vague, with no official markings or scale. Emily's lawyer pointed out that the map had no legal standing and that Karen had provided no evidence to support her claims. By the end of the session, it was clear that Karen had no case. The mediator encouraged her to drop the lawsuit, warning her that continuing to pursue it could result in significant legal fees. Karen's face hardened, but she reluctantly agreed to think about it. Emily left the mediation feeling cautiously optimistic. She hoped the experience had been enough to dissuade Karen from taking things further. But Karen was far from done. A week later, Emily came home to find a bright yellow notice taped to her front door. It was from the homeowner association, claiming that a complaint had been filed against her for unauthorized construction. Karen had apparently taken her fight to the homeowner association, accusing Emily of building the pool without proper approval. Emily felt her stomach drop. She knew she had followed all the rules, but the sheer audacity of Karen's persistence was wearing her down. She immediately contacted Alice, who reassured her that the homeowner association couldn't take action without concrete evidence. "You've got the permits," Alice reminded her, "and they've already been approved. We'll respond to the complaint formally, but don't lose sleep over this." Emily tried to stay calm, but it was becoming increasingly clear that Karen was determined to make her life miserable. Every time she thought the situation was resolved, Karen found a new way to escalate the conflict. Emily began to feel like a prisoner in her own home, constantly on edge and wondering what Karen would do next. One evening, as Emily sat on her back deck, staring at the pool that had become the center of so much turmoil, she realized she couldn't let Karen win. This was her home, her sanctuary, and she wouldn't allow anyone to take that away from her. Little did she know, the battle was about to take an even more dramatic turn. Karen's next move would push Emily to her limits, testing her resolve and forcing her to fight harder than ever to protect what was hers. Emily sat in her lawyer Alice's office, staring at the neatly organized stack of papers before her. It had been weeks since the mediation with Karen, but the situation was far from over. Karen's persistence was relentless, and her newest tactic, filing a formal complaint with the homeowner association, had thrown Emily into another round of stress and frustration. Despite knowing she had followed every rule and had airtight documentation to back up her case, the constant back and forth was exhausting. Alice adjusted her glasses and gave Emily a reassuring smile. "Look, you've done everything by the book. You have the property deed, the survey, and the homeowner association permits for the pool. Their own records show it was approved. Karen can file all the complaints she wants, but it doesn't change the facts. Let's focus on addressing this methodically." Emily appreciated Alice's confidence, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't going to stop until she had caused real damage. Over the next few days, Alice worked on drafting a detailed response to the homeowner association, including copies of all the permits and documentation proving that the pool was entirely within Emily's property. While the legal side was being handled, Emily started noticing more subtle but infuriating tactics from Karen. One morning, Emily found a note taped to her front door. It wasn't from the homeowner association, but from Karen herself. In large, bold letters, it read, "You might have fooled the homeowner association for now, but the truth always comes out. Enjoy the pool while you still can." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The note wasn't outright threatening, but it was unsettling enough to make her worry. She took a picture of the note and sent it to Alice, who advised her to keep it for documentation but not to engage. That evening, as Emily sat in her backyard trying to relax, she noticed Karen standing on the edge of her property again. This time, Karen wasn't alone. She had brought 2 other neighbors with her. They were gesturing toward the pool and talking animatedly. Emily's stomach turned as she realized Karen was trying to rally others against her. The next homeowner association meeting was scheduled for the following week, and Emily decided she would attend to defend herself. She had avoided these meetings since moving in, thinking they were mostly about mundane neighborhood issues like landscaping and trash collection. But now it seemed her attendance was necessary. The night of the meeting, Emily walked into the small community center feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. The room was already buzzing with conversation, and she quickly spotted Karen sitting near the front, flanked by a few neighbors who appeared to be her allies. Karen shot Emily a smug look as she entered, and Emily felt her resolve harden. When it was time for the open forum, Karen wasted no time in voicing her complaint. She stood up dramatically, clutching a folder of papers that she waved for emphasis. "I'm here to address the ongoing issue of unauthorized construction in our neighborhood," Karen began, her voice carrying an air of self-righteousness. "It's come to my attention, and the attention of several other concerned residents, that a certain homeowner has built a pool on land that doesn't entirely belong to her. This is not just a violation of homeowner association rules, it's a blatant disregard for the integrity of our community." Murmurs spread through the room, and Karen paused to let her words sink in. She continued, "I've spoken to multiple residents, and we all agree that this kind of behavior sets a dangerous precedent. If we let one person get away with this, what's to stop others from doing the same? We must take action to protect our neighborhood." Emily felt her pulse quicken as Karen sat down, looking around the room with a satisfied expression. The homeowner association president, a composed man named Richard, nodded and turned to Emily. "Miss Thompson, would you like to respond to these claims?" Emily stood, holding her prepared materials. She spoke calmly but firmly. "Thank you, Richard. First, I want to clarify that my pool was built entirely within my property boundaries, as confirmed by a professional survey and recorded in the county records. I also obtained all necessary permits from the homeowner association before construction began. Here are copies of the survey, the deed to my property, and the homeowner association's approval letter." She handed the documents to Richard, who examined them carefully before passing them to the other board members. "I understand that this has caused some confusion," Emily continued, "but the facts clearly show that I've complied with every rule and regulation. The claims being made against me are not supported by any evidence." Karen's face flushed as the board reviewed the documents. One of the members, a woman named Linda, spoke up. "This survey is recent and appears legitimate. I don't see any reason to believe Miss Thompson's pool is in violation of homeowner association rules." Another board member nodded in agreement. "The permits are in order. It seems like this issue has already been resolved through the proper channels." Karen stood up abruptly. "With all due respect, there's more to this than just paperwork. My husband always said the property lines were incorrect, and I have every right to fight for what's mine." Richard raised a hand to calm her down. "Miss Johnson, we understand your concerns, but unless you can provide concrete evidence to dispute the survey, there's nothing more we can do." Karen opened her mouth to argue but quickly realized she was losing ground. She sat back down, her expression stormy. After the meeting, several neighbors approached Emily to express their support. "Don't let her get to you," one woman said. "She's been a thorn in everyone's side for years." Emily felt a surge of relief but knew the battle wasn't over. Karen's history of persistence and manipulation meant she wouldn't back down easily. Over the next week, Karen's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She started spreading rumors about Emily around the neighborhood, accusing her of bribing the homeowner association board and using her pool to host wild parties. Emily stayed focused, documenting every interaction and incident to protect herself. The turning point came when Emily's security camera captured footage of Karen trespassing into her backyard again. This time, Karen wasn't alone. She had brought a man with a tape measure. presumably to gather evidence for her case. Emily immediately called the police and filed a formal trespassing report. When the police confronted Karen, she claimed she was only checking on a boundary issue, but the officers weren't convinced. Karen was issued a warning and told to stay off Emily's property. With the police report and security footage in hand, Alice filed a counterclaim against Karen for harassment and defamation. The case quickly gained traction, and Karen found herself on the defensive. In court, Emily's documentation painted a clear picture of Karen's pattern of behavior, leaving little doubt about her intentions. The judge ruled in Emily's favor, ordering Karen to pay for Emily's legal fees and issuing a restraining order to prevent further harassment. The Homeowner Association, embarrassed by their initial involvement, issued a public apology to Emily and promised to review their complaint process to avoid similar situations in the future. As the dust settled, Emily finally felt a sense of peace. She hosted a small gathering of supportive neighbors by her pool, celebrating the end of the ordeal. Though the experience had been draining, it taught her the importance of standing her ground and protecting her rights. Karen, meanwhile, retreated into her house, her reputation in the neighborhood shattered. Emily knew she would always have to be vigilant, but for now she could finally enjoy the home she had worked so hard to create. The final chapter of Emily's ordeal began with a cautious sense of calm. After the court ruling in her favor and the restraining order against Karen, Emily felt like she could finally breathe. The neighborhood chatter about the case had quieted, and even Karen seemed to have retreated into the shadows, her grandstanding reduced to a sullen silence. But Emily couldn't shake the lingering feeling that Karen wouldn't go down without one last attempt to stir trouble. Weeks passed uneventfully. Emily finally started to reclaim her sense of normalcy. She invited friends over for a poolside barbecue, resumed her weekend gardening, and even began to get to know some of the neighbors who had been supportive during her legal battle. The pool, once a source of conflict, had become the peaceful retreat Emily had envisioned from the beginning. One crisp autumn evening, as Emily was preparing dinner, she noticed something unusual on her security camera feed. The live footage displayed the edge of her property near the backyard fence, where Karen had previously been spotted lurking. This time, the feed showed a figure standing just outside the property line, pacing back and forth. Emily's heart sank. The figure was unmistakably Karen. Emily hesitated for a moment, debating whether to confront her or call the police. As she watched, Karen stepped closer, craning her neck to peer into the yard. The boldness of the act, especially given the restraining order, sent a wave of anger through Emily. She grabbed her phone and called the non-emergency police line, explaining the situation. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car pulled up in front of Karen's house. Emily watched from her living room window as the officers knocked on Karen's door. Karen emerged, clearly agitated, and began gesturing wildly as she spoke to the officers. From the distance, Emily couldn't hear the conversation, but it was clear Karen was trying to justify her actions. The officers eventually left after speaking with her for several minutes, but Emily felt uneasy. The next morning, Emily woke to find another note taped to her front door. This one was far less subtle than Karen's previous messages. In jagged handwriting, it read, "You may have won in court, but this isn't over. Some things are worth fighting for." Emily's stomach turned. She immediately called her lawyer, Alice, and forwarded a photo of the note. Alice was alarmed but reminded Emily that the restraining order could be enforced if Karen continued this behavior. "We'll file a report and submit this as evidence," Alice said firmly. "She's digging herself a deeper hole. Just document everything and stay vigilant." Emily followed Alice's advice, but as the days went on, Karen's behavior escalated. One evening, Emily returned home to find her mailbox stuffed with anonymous letters accusing her of being a fraud and destroying the neighborhood. Another time, she discovered her trash bins overturned and their contents scattered across the driveway. Although Emily couldn't prove Karen was responsible, the timing and nature of the incidents left little doubt in her mind. The final confrontation came one chilly November night. Emily had just settled onto her couch with a cup of tea and a book when her security system alerted her to movement in the backyard. She pulled up the live feed and froze. Karen was standing inside the yard near the pool, holding a can of spray paint. Emily's heart raced as she watched Karen spray large, erratic letters onto the wooden deck surrounding the pool. The words were barely legible, but Emily could make out phrases like thief and not yours. Without hesitation, Emily dialed 911. "This is Emily Thompson," she said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "I have a restraining order against my neighbor, and she's trespassing on my property right now. She's vandalizing my property. Please send someone immediately." The police arrived within minutes, catching Karen red-handed as she attempted to climb back over the fence. Emily watched from her window as Karen argued with the officers, her voice loud and shrill. "This isn't trespassing," Karen shouted. "That pool was built on stolen land. I'm taking back what's mine." The officers were unmoved by her ranting. They placed Karen in handcuffs and escorted her to the patrol car. Emily felt a mix of relief and disbelief as the police took Karen away. Over the next few days, the fallout from Karen's arrest became the talk of the neighborhood. Several neighbors approached Emily to express their sympathy and share their own stories of dealing with Karen's antics. Some revealed that Karen had a history of filing frivolous complaints and spreading false rumors about others in the community. Karen's arrest led to a more serious legal case. With the vandalism and violation of the restraining order, the evidence against her was overwhelming. Alice assured Emily that Karen would face consequences this time, likely in the form of fines, probation, or even jail time if the court deemed it necessary. A month later, Emily attended the hearing, where Karen's lawyer tried unsuccessfully to argue that her actions were the result of emotional distress over losing her property. The judge wasn't convinced. Karen was ordered to pay for the damages to Emily's deck, cover all legal fees, and undergo mandatory counseling. She was also warned that any further violations of the restraining order would result in immediate incarceration. As the judge read the final decision, Karen sat silently, her defiance finally replaced by a resigned expression. Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in months, she could see a clear path forward, free from Karen's interference. In the weeks that followed, Emily repaired the damage to her deck and began to fully enjoy her home again. She hosted a holiday party for her neighbors, many of whom had become friends through their shared experiences with Karen. The pool sparkled under the glow of string lights, a symbol of everything Emily had fought to protect. Karen, meanwhile, became a recluse. Her reputation in the neighborhood was irreparably damaged, and she rarely left her house. Some neighbors speculated that she might sell her property and move, but Emily didn't dwell on Karen's future. For her, the ordeal was finally over. Looking out over her backyard one quiet evening, Emily reflected on everything she had endured. The journey had been draining, but it had also taught her resilience. She had stood up for herself, defended her rights, and come out stronger on the other side. The pool, once a battleground, was now a peaceful retreat again. As Emily dipped her toes into the cool water, she felt a deep sense of gratitude not just for her home, but for the strength she had found within herself to protect it.